Thank you. And now we're going to do our opening talk. The opening talk is going to cover the history, the approach, the roadmap, and then we'll do some logistics. So let's begin with the history. This is an Alternatives to Violence Project workshop. We call it AVP, but it's specifically a Cultures of Justice and Peace workshop series. AVP was developed by peace and civil rights activists, alternative educators, and people incarcerated in Greenhaven Prison in New York in 1975. Friends, peace teams in Asia West Pacific used AVP to develop tools and skills necessary to create cultures of justice and peace in war zones and former war zones and under very challenging conditions. We incorporated a knowledge base from the Alternatives to Violence Project and then added trauma resiliency and peer co-counseling, developmental play to reconstitute cognition, interrupting the cycles of oppression and multi-generational trauma, and organizing based on a consensus of conscience. The local history, it's come into this area in this way. So that's just, you could read more online if you're interested. And I pass to someone for the approach. Okay, the approach of AVP, or the assumptions that we bring to this work, we try to make explicit. So if we could go around, if people one at a time, if you in turn would just read one of these approaches. Go ahead. Number 2. Yes. Number 3. Okay. Thank you. So those are the assumptions that we're bringing into this workshop. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the approach? Okay. Does anybody have any response to that question? Okay. Thank you very much. And now I pass to someone to do the roadmap. Thank you. The workshop follows a roadmap. So this basic workshop, it's going to go through the steps of friendship, and then we're going to look at affirmation, communication, and cooperation. And these are the precursors to conflict that set us up to really do good work in creative conflict resolution. And so we will be looking at these questions of power throughout this workshop. So this trauma resiliency workshop builds on the basic and our understanding of transforming power, and what happens when the elements of the basic workshop don't work well. So when friendships, some of the worst violence in the world is among loved ones and neighbors. When friendship and family breaks down, what are the agreements, the public agreements that we all hold each other to? When we don't feel safe with ourselves or others, it's very hard to affirm. How do you build safety so that you can affirm yourself and others? So when memory is sequestered, when you're traumatized, memory is sequestered in a part of the brain that has no words. So how do you communicate? And we look at how to remember without reliving so that you can regain your ability to communicate. Or in cooperation, what happens when relationships are wounded? And how do we reconnect and restore those relationships so that we can cooperate with each other? So that's what we're going to be doing in this workshop. It follows exactly the basic workshop, but when those elements break down, how do we overcome that breakdown? So in this social transformation workshop, we're going to be looking at integrity. Sometimes it's called consensus or a consensus of conscience. And the elements of that are confidence. We will begin with looking at confidence in transforming power in every moment. And then we will look at conviction. How do we actually do that in every moment, even when things are challenging and the situation isn't going well? And then once we have that established, we're going to look at how our lives can be transformed guided by transforming power. And on that foundation of our own personal transformation, we're going to look at how we collectively can work together to discern a consensus of conscience. This is not a consensus of opinion where we all have to be like-minded or fight, disagree, but how can we look at where we find ourselves united or in accord, like these things all resonate, or where there's issues and how do we go deeper and look for that, where we find ourselves united in love and conscience. So consensus means convergence. Where do we find ourselves converging at a deeper level? So this is a liberation workshop, and it follows exactly the steps on discerning a consensus of conscience. But again, when those steps break down, how do you address those problems so that we are able to fulfill the confidence, the conviction, the transformed lives, and the consensus of conscience? So when we experience transforming power everywhere, we can support equality. We see the equality of value of life everywhere, which challenges privilege, prejudice, or the ranking of people, the putting down of people. And when we explore conviction and we discover that transforming power is there beyond myself, even where I'm broken or I fall short or I'm inadequate, I have a sense of humility or compassion that challenges privilege. We don't have to put myself or others up in order to recognize and affirm their goodness, but that we all have we are all grounded in humility and compassion and don't need to rank people against each other. And it's on that foundation then that we start transforming our lives. But when we're inwardly guided by transforming power, that transformation requires feedback from others. We need to stay open to the feedback of others so that we don't become fanatics or egomaniacs or just enacting our woundedness on other people. We really need to stay open to feedback and learn whenever we get feedback to say thank you, and then think, what part of this can I take in? And finally, we're going to look at conflict transformation and settling of disputes. That can bring us back into a consensus of conscience. How do we settle those disputes among us and resolve conflicts creatively? Okay, thank you very much. And now we will pass to someone to cover the logistics.